Good afternoon. Good afternoon and happy long weekend Friday. I trust everyone is safe and well. Bittersweet is probably the only way I can describe how I'm feeling on this long weekend Friday. Welcome to the 8th Open Classroom Civil Designer webinar at the end of our second week in this webinar series. Today is Friday, which we set aside for the water module, with Cameron as today's guest civil designer software facilitator. As always, please feel free to use the text chat service on your GoToWebinar floating dialog to ask us any questions you may have during Cameron's presentation. At the close of today's webinar, please answer our 6-question survey, which really won't take very long, but will give us an indication of what we're doing right and what we're not, so we can work at perfecting this service for you, our very important clients. So, without further delay, Cameron, our guest presenter for the day, please take it away.
Thank you, Charles. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Open Classroom, where I'm going to be looking at the water module and focus in on the consumption database. In Civil Designer, you can design new networks as well as analyze existing networks. This is an existing network, so what I'm going to do is create a database. I'm going to import municipal data, show you some powerful functionality within this menu, and then I'm going to update my demands. Beforehand, I've gone and created a water file. Zooming into my network, you can see that I've got the CAD drawing. The CAD drawing contains stand numbers, and I've switched on my demands, which indicate 0 at the moment. I can also go to data spreadsheet, and show you that at this stage there are no demands. Going to consumption, open consumption database. Let's go and give it a name. When you open up a project, it doesn't automatically open up the consumption database associated to the project. You would go and open up, and that's for a reason. This consumption database uses a lot of resources. With it open, I can show you that we don't have any information just yet. Bringing in some municipal data, and this would be consumption information that's been recorded on site. I go and select my file. You can bring in text files or CSV files. This particular file has about 12,700 rows of information. So it doesn't go and show you all the information. It gives you a preview of what your file looks like in order for you to determine whether you've selected the correct delimiter. Our first row here represents our column names, and the data start row would be line number 2. You can bring in a whole lot of information, but what is compulsory is your count or reference number, your reading date, and your consumption figures. In addition to that, you also have the option of selecting stand numbers, names, surnames, street names, street numbers, and a category. Category is very useful as a filter so that at a later stage when you want to compare your figures, you can do so. Examples of categories would be commercial, complex, household, and parks. This file has 475 records or stands. Each stand consists of approximately 27 readings. Let's take a look at our consumption table. There's your 475 stands. And as you go and select a stand, the information at the bottom indicates your consumption readings applicable to the stand you've selected on top. At the bottom here, you can go and specify certain filters. There's the categories I mentioned before. and then you can show your readings or your monthly consumption. Looking at our information on the top here, you'll see that I don't have any coordinates. Now, it may be that you're in a situation where you can't go out on site and measure these coordinates. So I'm going to use the powerful functionality and pick up my coordinates per stand. Before doing so, I'll show you that these stands are all on a particular CAD layer. If you're not quite sure how to put on these stand numbers, I'm going to show you an example. Because of Civil Designer's full integration, we also give you a toolkit. And this toolkit comprises of general architectural mechanical survey, structural civil. Within the survey toolkit, there's a function called earth numbers. In a similar manner, if I go down to the general plan, you'll see there's another function here called earth numbering and area table. I'm going to use this because I also want the area of my stand that I may use for design purposes at a later stage. You can go and specify a certain layer to store these stand numbers on. And I've gone and selected to draw an area table in addition to my stand numbers. Take note that the current text and pen settings will be used for your stand number and areas. Reading my prompt, position the top left corner of table. And then I'm going to place my stand numbers horizontal to my closest boundary line. You go and specify your stand number. And you'll see that Civil Designer automatically places the stand number in the middle of your stand. Doing that a couple of times. And once you're done, you can then go and hit spacebar. There's the information, the rounded off areas and the actual areas. It also goes and puts in additional output information. So if I click on OK here and go and open my output window, I can see the total amount of area, making that smaller. Right, now using these stand numbers, I'm going to ask Civil Designer to go and calculate the coordinates of my stands. So I go back to my water mode, back to consumption, and select coordinate from stand numbers. You would go and specify which CAD layer to use. And if you've got existing coordinates, you could then go and override it. Clicking on import. You'll see my stand numbers now have these red diamonds. So that's given me as an indication as to which stands were calculated. In this case, I went and saved these stands on a different CAD layer. So they aren't included in the calculation of the coordinates. Now that I've got these coordinates, I can use them to determine where the closest water connection would be. So moving on to the next function here, go back to consumption, allocate connection points. Using this function, let's look at this stand over here. It would then go and put in a 100-meter search distance, and finding the closest main water line, it would then go and make the connection point over there. If you've got existing connections, you could then override the existing ones. Take note that 14 consumers were rejected as the search distance of 100 meters is exceeded. Right, so there's my house connections automatically drawn in for me. Now going back to the message that 14 stands were not connected, I'm going to use this consumption table to my advantage. Just need to point out here that I've now got my coordinates. I can then use this filter and change from all consumers and select too far from network. There's my 14 stands that weren't connected to my network. Now you can imagine if you've got 5,000 stands, you wouldn't graphically be able to go and view which stands they were. So instead, I'm going to go and select a stand, and I'm going to go and click on the show button. In that case, the stands are zoomed into. And if we look at the bigger picture, you can see that these stands are actually quite far from where our network is. Using some more tools, I'm going back to my consumption function. I'm going to go and look at a summary graph. Here we are given the option to view the total consumption or the consumption per connection. You can go and specify a certain date. You can go and specify a certain category. Let's look at the complex category. If you compare the total consumption to the consumption per connection, you'll see there's quite a big difference. Let's investigate a bit further. Going back to my consumption table, specifying a category of complex. You can see we've only got 3 complex readings. If I were to select the first one and look at the first reading date, we're looking at January. Same applies to the second one. However, the third complex only has a first reading date in August. So that would make sense why the graphs look so different. Now, the last function I want to show you is using this consumption database and then updating the demands in your network. Looking at my display settings, you can go to pipes. You can go and simply right click here, go and specify what to choose from. Put in your own line properties, your annotation properties, specify certain color schemes for your flows. Same applies to your nodes. Take note that after discharge here, I've gone and put in 0.3. So I want my discharge to have 3 decimal places. We also give you the option to go and specify a discharge of liters per second as well as liters per minute. Let's go and update our demands. Going back to consumption, select update demands. The objective here is to calculate your demands in your network according to the average consumption. Here you can go and specify your time range. So let me go and select a certain time. And as I go and select a different month with my mouse wheel, you can see how the information dynamically updates. I want to run it for a 24-month period. Click on update, and there my demands have now been updated. Now that I've got demands, I can go to analysis and run a single step analysis. And now my flows have also been updated. Just to answer a couple of questions that you might have, I need to point out that if you've got a pipe that is a rising main and you don't want it to be part of your consumption figures, you can then go to Data, select Groups, and create a group. Once you've got an additional group, you can go and select a pipe. You can go to your properties and you can go and put it under a certain group. Once you've got it under the group, you could go to Data again, select Groups, and here you could have went to Settings, and there you can go and specify whether you want the pipe to be visible or not, and whether you want it to take part in that calculation or not. In our case, we've already done the calculation, so it's already worked out the demand. Clicking on Close, just to show you that it is no longer visible. Now, what happens if you've got a very large stand and this particular stand has more than 1 meter? In that case, it's not a problem if I go back to consumption, consumption table, and I go and select a stand, these stands could have different meters at the bottom here. So you aren't limited to just 1 meter. Also need to point out that if I go to consumption, open consumption database, one project could have numerous consumption databases. You can open up another one. In my case, I'm going to say no. If you do want to bring in GPS coordinates, it is possible. However, you would have to go to File, Project Settings, and go and create a terrain file first. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Have a fantastic weekend. See you next time. Cheers for now.
Thank you, Cameron. That was excellent. And thank you to all who attended today. Please answer the 6-question survey, which will be appearing in the next few seconds. And please remember to renew your work from home licenses and follow us on LinkedIn. That's the Civil Designer Software page. See you all on Tuesday at the same time, same place, using the same link for our weekly survey and terrain module class. Have a great long weekend and goodbye.